Alright guys, so today I will be explaining the Spider-Man comic known as The Death of Spider-Man, or Ultimate Spider-Man Comics 156 through 160. So if you guys don't know what The Death of Spider-Man is, it's basically a storytelling on how the ultimate variation of Peter Parker's Spider-Man died. And after his passing, Miles Morales would then take Peter's role as the new Spider-Man. So without further ado, let's talk about The Death of Spider-Man. Starting off with issue 156. So The Death of Spider-Man starts off with the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. talking to Norman Osborn, or as most people know him as, Green Goblin. And this variation of Green Goblin is no joke. If you thought he was a menace in No Way Home, you haven't seen anything yet. One time, Ultimate Green Goblin broke into J. Jonah Jameson's building. He grabbed him by the head and then he just... So yeah, the ultimate variation of Green Goblin is no joke. So while the S.H.I.E.L.D. director is talking to Norman, Peter and Mary Jane are just having a nice time. That is, until Captain America appears at the window and tells Peter to suit up because something is about to go down. And that something is Green Goblin and the rest of the Sinister Six escaping. So Captain America and Spider-Man are just talking to each other until Captain America gets an alert saying that the Sinister Six have escaped. So Captain America leaves and he's also told to leave Spider-Man behind. So after escaping, the Sinister Six then finds out that there's a huge showdown going down between the superheroes of the Marvel Universe and S.H.I.E.L.D. on a bridge. And when Peter finds out, it marks the end of issue 156. So now let's move on to issue 157. So at the beginning of issue 157, Peter's basically processing everything that's going on. Like how the Sinister Six escaped, and why S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers are fighting on a bridge. And the Sinister Six are also processing everything that's going on as well. Until Dr. Octopus basically says, "Hey, yo, Norman, I appreciate everything that you've done for me in the past, but I don't really want to be part of the Sinister Six anymore." And Norman responds to that by saying... So then Green Goblin and Dr. Octopus fight for a very long time. And while Green Goblin and Doc Ock are fighting, Peter confronts Aunt May and Mary Jane and basically tells them, "Hey, yo, the Sinister Six are coming for me. They know me, they know my voice, they'll know me. So, like, yeah, you guys better get out of here." So then after that, Peter then goes out of his way to find the Sinister Six. And while he's looking for them, Green Goblin and Doc Ock are still fighting. But then Green Goblin proves to be too much for Dr. Octopus to handle. And then Green Goblin just absolutely decimates Dr. Octopus. And when Peter finds out, he is absolutely shocked. So then Spider-Man goes back to the bridge where S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers are fighting. And he sees that Captain America is about to get shot by the Punisher. So then he takes the bullet for Captain America, but then hurts himself in the process. And this is where issue 157 ends, so let's move on to issue 158. So at the beginning of issue 158, Peter is trying to recover after getting shot. And Peter sees that the Sinister Six is trying to find out where he lives. So he decides to follow them. And then it cuts to Iceman and the Human Torch in Peter's neighborhood. But then out of nowhere, the Human Torch and Iceman get confronted by the Sinister Six. So then the Sinister Six try to get the Human Torch and Iceman to tell them where Peter is, but they don't oblige. So then the Sinister Six are left with no other options other than to fight the Human Torch and Iceman. And the fight between the Human Torch, Iceman, and the Sinister Six lasts for a very long time. But then the Iceman is knocked out by Electro. But then after that, Peter shows up and he just throws Vulture out of the entire neighborhood. And this leaves the Sinister Six shook. And then Peter says, "Who's next?" And this would be the end of issue 158. So now let's move on to issue 159. So at the beginning of issue 159, Peter starts absolutely throwing hands with the Sinister Six. He knocks them all down and starts throwing haymakers at the Sandman. And he stops to find out that everyone in his neighborhood now knows his secret identity. But then out of nowhere, Sandman appears right behind Spider-Man looking pissed off and starts beating him down. And then Vulture comes back and does the exact same thing. And the beatdown on Peter continues until Electro takes out Sandman because Electro wants to take out Spider-Man all by himself. But then out of nowhere, Aunt May comes in clutch and she shoots Electro with a gun that simultaneously takes out him and the Vulture. So then after that, everyone in the neighborhood, including Peter, gets a chance to regroup until Green Goblin comes back. And this would be the end of issue 159 and the beginning of the final issue, issue 160. So at the beginning of this issue, Green Goblin is already trying to destroy Peter, Aunt May, and Gwen Stacy. So then Peter tells both of them that they need to get out like right now before something extremely bad happens. So then Peter tries his very hardest to take out Green Goblin even for a short amount of time. So then Peter tries to get the Human Torch back on his feet so that the Human Torch and Green Goblin can fight each other to buy Peter some time. So then the Human Torch and the Green Goblin go head to head, but it appears that the Green Goblin is too much for the Human Torch to handle. And the power of the Human Torch was sucked into the power of the Green Goblin. And now the Green Goblin is more powerful than ever. But even at his strongest, Peter tries his best to put up a fight against the Green Goblin, but it's still not enough. And when Peter is about to accept his fate, Mary Jane comes in clutch and she runs over the Green Goblin with a truck. And then Peter and MJ share one last moment together before Peter moves her out of harm's way. And then Peter comes back to finish off Green Goblin by grabbing the truck that MJ used, putting it over his head, and then slamming it straight on him. And once wasn't enough, so Peter actually had to do it again. And all Peter had to say after that was ow. And then after defeating Green Goblin, an explosion severely injured Peter. And this explosion was so bad that Peter couldn't even move anymore. And because of how injured Peter was, and because he couldn't move anymore, he died. And everyone around him was mourning his death. And as for Green Goblin, well, surprisingly, he was still alive. Even after all of the stuff that Peter put him through, he survived all of that. But yeah, guys, that was the death of Spider-Man, and I hope you all enjoyed this video, and thank you all for watching.